Oh God.
Welcome, dear guests, to Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture's first movie offering of 2022. My name is Muhannad Ghawanme, Executive Director of Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture, and at least at the outset, host of this special occasion. We have the pleasure of hosting writer, associate producer, and director of the film Zanka Contact that Al-Bustan has had the pleasure of screening remotely over the last 3 days. We have Ismael in attendance, Director El Iraki in attendance, in conversation with Al-Bustan Seeds of Culture's go-to film curator par excellence, Joseph Fahim, who writes extensively on cinema and culture as well. Although Joseph will lead and moderate the discussion, you dear audience, are welcome to send in your comments and questions that will be addressed after their conclusion of their own Q&A. Questions relating to the electric Zanka Contact. I'm going to pronounce it the way that the female lead character in the film sings it. A film with an abundance of rewards that I'm sure many of you have already discerned, having watched the film. I'd like to thank our funders and donors, without whose support we would not be positioned to bring you such arts programming. These include public and private foundations, funds, and collectives, Asian Mosaic Fund, Bread and Roses Community Fund, the Ford Foundation, Independence Foundation, Independence Public Media Foundation, the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage, Philanthropy Network Greater Philadelphia, PNC Arts Alive, the Samuel F. Fells Fund, the Southeast Asian Mutual Assistance Association Coalition, the Stockton Rush Barkle Foundation, and the William Penn Foundation, as well as federal, state, and local government entities, the Philadelphia Council on the Arts, the Philadelphia Cultural Fund, and the U.S. Small Business Administration. I would be remiss not to thank all of the individual donors whose support has long sustained Al-Bustan with care and commitment, including audience members graciously joining us tonight. We welcome your donations. I will now turn things over to Ustad Joseph Fahim to introduce Ustad Ismael El Iraki to lead the Q&A and moderate your engagement as well. Then I will rejoin you to close the discussion thereafter. Enjoy.
Thank you, Muhammad. Thank you for this introduction. Again, a great delight being with Al-Bustan, hosting another film that I'm very passionate about, that I've been following for a long time, and it was like a great delight when I saw it in Venice for the first time. A great, like a breath of fresh air, very different from things we expect from Arab cinema. I want to get back to that, but like while I'm talking, if anybody wants to already like send their questions, please do, and like in a bit we'll open up the formally the door for discussion or for like questions. So yeah, like Ismael, first of all, like thank you for allowing us to show your wonderful film. And I know like you've been getting this question. I've never asked you this, but I have to ask you this now. You're one of the survivor of the 2015 Paris attack, where, you know, like a member of ISIS, they opened up fire in a concert by Eagles of Death Metal and killed and murdered several concert goers. You were one of them. You were one of the people who like witnessed death in front of his very own eyes, and was struggling for it for a while. How, to what extent did this film come from your experience of dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic disorder syndrome?
PTSD then. Well, first thing is I'd like to thank you for hosting this. I'd like to thank Al-Bustan for this screening. I'd like to thank everyone who watched this movie, because this is like a really big deal for me. And I'm really happy to be here. Well, you don't mince words, do you? straight into the heart of the movie. It's the heart of the movie. It's the heart of the movie. That's the answer of the question. Basically, what happened is that I came out of this attack totally broken, as like pretty much all of us, I think, were. But the thing is, I realized getting out of there that I didn't come out a survivor. Just surviving something doesn't make you a survivor. You come out of something like that, you're a victim. And the process of becoming a survivor is something very complex, actually. And it takes a long time. It's about liberation of speech. It's about liberation of emotion. It's about everything that didn't interest the media at the time. The media was obsessed with the spectacular aspect of violence, and with other aspects like me, myself, being of Arab and North African origin, like the attackers, how did I politically relate to that? And honestly, I was more haunted by what was happening inside my head and inside my body, because PTSD is a very physical disease. So the emotion that becomes a memory, it finds a home in your body. Actually, it lives in your heartbeat. It lives in your nostrils, in your eyes. It's something that you feel as much as you remember it. So it just found its way into my script that it became a movie about that specific dynamic and that specific time that the media didn't really want to talk about, because it was more a cinema time than media or news coverage time. So it was something that I needed a lot of artistic freedom to talk about. And I decided very early on that it wouldn't be about an attack. It would be about something more general, not that specific, so that I could speak about this needed time of reconstruction. And this is the heart of the movie. It's about the path you have to take to become a survivor when you're a victim. And it's a love story between two survivors. It's this guy is still a victim of something that happened to him 35 years ago, and she's a survivor, and she recognizes those symptoms in him, and she kind of drives him through that path. So
like when you talk about it like that, I mean, what's astonishing is with the film you feel these very negative, intense emotions gets diffused with the script, with the story, because it is, like true that it's about these people, or like this couple trying gradually to overcome traumas. But also, like, it's a fun movie. Like,
absolutely,
it's a punk romance. Like, there is the music, there is like you play.
Dude, that is what life is. That is what life is. I mean, this thing happened to us. If we were still talking about the Bataclan attack, it happened to us during a tremendously fun concert. And those emotions are linked. That is life. That's how it happens. I mean, it's usually it will be the thing that you love that saves you, So to me, it was music. Not just music, actually, but this movie is made of everything I love. I have a habit of saying that it wasn't a movie in my mind. It was a fire. I mean, it was like it was like a firestorm. Like it just ate everything around it. It just made fire out of everything that I love, which is, like, of course, there's the music, but it's written for those specific actors who I love. It's written for certain places of Casablanca, but it's also all those references of cinema history There's Western in there, there's Cocteau in there, there's Tarantino in there, there's David Lynch in there. Everything I love is in there. But it's more than that. My mother sings in the movie. It's shot in my grandmother's house. There's my rings and my freaking clothes in it. I mean, it's everything I love, but it's also everything I'm afraid of. It's everything. It's my nightmares. It's my visions. Everything you see, like those visions and nightmares that Larsen has, it's my own. They're my own. So it's like just everything poured out in there.
Again, you know, like, I mean, what astonished me about your film, like, I still like remember the first time I saw it in the first 20 minutes or so in Marrakesh. And I remember, you know, like, I was taken aback because finally, you know, like, you guys, like you, Morocco, I mean, you've had like a habit of you know, like, creating some very accomplished and different genre films. So,
Okay.
you know, like, there's, you know, like, there's been like this wave of noirs and thrillers in like around like from 2010 onward. There's some comedies. But yeah, I mean, still like the most dominant film that comes out of North Africa are, you know, like the same topics, you know, like we're accustomed to. You know, like disempowered women and you know, and terrorism and immigration. It's the same topics. And it's also like the same topics that usually not just like funders go for. It's what like major festivals like Cannes and others, you know, like they essentially go for. It's a fairly gosh. So was it difficult for you to get foreign financiers on board with this project? Were you also like trying to intentionally create something that is different from what's around? That's one question. And then the second question is, like the use of music is very, also like very atypical because, you know, like we're you know, like the kind of music that we're expecting to see from the Arab world, also specific genre, Orientalist and stuff like that. We never see like a rock movie from the Arab world. And in your case, it's an authentically Arab rock film.
100.
So yeah.
So yeah, so those are two very different questions. To the first one, I'll answer yes and yes. It was extremely difficult because, well, basically there were two censorships. I'm seeing a question right here about the CCM and how the movie spread debate in the CCM, like the cinema center in Morocco during its funding. And yes, of course, it was like a double censorship because in Morocco we had like effective real censorship. Me, for instance, my my short film was banned in Morocco. My producer had just made a movie. It was Nabil Ayouch's Much Loved that had just been banned in Morocco too. So when we came to Morocco to find financing, because it was really important, basically it's a predominantly Moroccan movie. I mean, I'm talking strictly in terms of production here. It's predominantly made with Moroccan money from the state. So we really needed that money. And in spite of the script gaining some attention in pretty much every foreign place we would take it, like Doha, France, wherever, it would not gain that momentum in Morocco because of those interdictions and because of those two movies were banned, and we kind of had a bad rep in Morocco. So that was like the first censorship.
The film was complete shortly after Much Loved was released. That's what you're telling me?
Yeah, actually, it was in financing when Much Loved was banned. So when it was before its release, it was banned when it was in Cannes. So they basically banned it without seeing it. But that was a dark time because it was a time when Morocco had no Ministry of Culture and the CCM had no head at that time. So when Sarim Fassiferi, the new head of CCM, came, when he came in, he kind of changed all that. And a lot of people in the commissions, you have to remember that we're talking about a time when, after the Spring Revolution in Morocco, the Islamists took over in Morocco, and they did a terrible job everywhere, but they did a great job at massacring culture. So basically, we had in the commissions deciding the fate of the movie, we had people from for example, we had people that had seen very few movies in their lives because they were from the Ministry of Religious Affairs, and they had kind of no business being there. And over time, it changed, but it took a few years to get the movie financed in Morocco. And then there's the second censorship in Europe, mostly. And it was like, why do you want to do Moroccan rock and roll love story?
It's not very Moroccan, or it's not very Casablanca.
It's not very Moroccan. That's very interesting. People telling you what's Moroccan or not, you know?
Yeah.
People from like an outside perspective telling you what's Moroccan or not. So the thing is, it became, this is our, and I say our because I think my whole team was in on this. This is our political statement, to say that our political stance is to say that we, as Moroccan filmmakers, African filmmakers, Arab filmmakers, we claim our right to make genre movies, to this freedom of imagination, you know, to not just being kind of boxed in to this place where our role would be sending postcards from our nation and, you know, giving news of our country. This is not our role. We're artists. So what we hope for is to be part of this collective hallucination that is cinema, you know? I personally don't care if a movie is American, Italian, Korean, whatever. Korean movies changed the way I fall in love. Italian movies changed my relationship to food. I mean, it's a very intimate thing when you think about it, right? So it doesn't really matter where you come from. Of course, you're going to talk about a specific situation in a specific place, but mostly cinema is a waking dream. It's a hallucination, and that's something that you can share with anyone. You know, that's what we want to be a part of. So yeah, and the music, right? That's the second one.
Yes.
Well, dude, so I believe in synesthesia, right? I believe that cinema is synesthesia. I believe that sounds call for images, and they call for movement, they call for emotion. I believe it's the same thing. And for me, I have whole parts of the movie that were called by songs. But the first page of my script was a playlist. And a lot of the music in the movie kind of wrote the movie. So for example, there's this band called Les Variations. So Les Variations was a rock band from the 70s. They actually opened for Led Zeppelin in the 70s, and they're kind of forgotten now. But they were a great, great band. And what they did was basically what I hope to do in cinema. I mean, they made music that was 100% authentic, because it was all Moroccan and was all rock and roll. It was really music as they felt it. And I grew up with this. I mean, I grew up with this band, but also with the whole scene that you see in the movie. The rock and metal scene in the movie is maybe the most documentary aspect of the movie, because there's not one extra in there. All the guys, all the girls that you see, for example, at the Cadaver concert, they're all 100% true to life, like Moroccan metalheads from the Moroccan metal community. And those guys 20 years ago, that was me. So yeah, it comes from that, this movie, a lot.
Um, one of the most fascinating things about the film, like aesthetically speaking, is you intentionally play with conventions. You intentionally play with cliches because you know, like from the outset of it, this is just you know, like I mean, if anybody just like want to you know like describe it in a very reductive way, they would say it's just another like movie about a prostitute who falls in love with a fallen star. Um, but you do it knowingly in the sense that you take these conventions and instead of like subverting them, you really embrace them. And I think like what makes the film is all of like everything that you described is the cultural specificities, is the music, is how big and loud and like garish it is. So yeah, like my question is, were you ever concerned about being criticized or you know like losing your audience for embracing something that yeah that many could interpret as cliches or conventional or
Absolutely not, because I couldn't, because it's just the way it's just the way I do things, and specifically it's the way I write. It's as I said earlier, it was this thing was a firestorm. I mean, there wasn't much. It was mostly emotion, you know. So the way it works for me is that okay, a character. It's kind of a midpoint between an idea, a cliche, if you will, and the person. And so for me, how it works is that I write four actors. Every part in the movie, with the exception of Larsen Snake, the rocker, the rock and roll guy, they were all written for that specific actress or actor. And so basically, my idea is that I start with a cliche, with a total cliche, the hooker with a golden heart, and the heroin addict, the rock star, and the pimp who's an addict, and the fallen on the bad side of the law cop and all that. So all those cliches. There are two things there. First one is you start from the cliche because the cliche is it's a place you know, not me, but I mean the audience. You know, it's a place you know. It's a place that you think you know everything about. It's very safe, and that's why cliches are bad, right? Because it's too safe. But what it allows me to do is take it as a starting point and go from the idea or the cliche to the person. What makes this character only this character and not a cliche of this character? And you can get really weird, you know, when you get close to the person and not the character or the cliche, because you're not building character on an idea, you're building it on a person. And you get a lot more freedom. For example, Said Bey, the actor who plays Said, so the pimp in the movie, he gives me a lot of freedom because of his huge, his great empathy and humanity. He allows me to do this thing that is very important to me, which is that nothing human is strange, you know, to him. Nothing is far from him. And so he can bring close to the audience any human emotion, no matter how morally ambiguous it is, you know? So if you work like that with every one of these characters, you gain another thing, which is that my basic matter, what I work on, is everything that Moroccan society rejects. We work on rejects. And if you think about it, that's the essence of rock and roll. That's what makes this movie rock and roll. I mean, it's the same way we work. Rock and roll was basically made with what people used to reject in music. Larson's, you know, saturation, all that, distortion. I mean, that was everything that was thrown away, everything that wasn't considered good, wasn't considered beautiful. And that's what they made rock and roll with. And basically, narratively, and also with like the look of the movie, the 35, what we did was use all the defects and put them front and center and just show you the beauty of him.
We have a question. Morocco is well known for its multilingualism, a reflection of its post-colonial condition. The film is noticeably in Darja, which is naturally the most organic choice. Did you write it originally in Darja, or did you work with the actors and co-writers to get the crisp dynamism of the dialogue? We rarely see such heavily scripted cinema and genre films in Darja as opposed to social realism, which I also agree.
Well, I'm loving this question because it's not just in Darija, it's in it's Darija Bidawiya, it's in Kazawi Darija, it's in the specific kind of slang of Casablanca. And it's a language I love. It's the language I dream in. So yes, of course it was written. I mean, the parts in English were written in English. The parts in Darija were written in Darija, and the parts I mean, well, that's pretty much. I mean, to me, language is like changing your clothes, or it's great because it's a way of thinking differently. You're a different person, but there are so many voices. You can't find the exact right voice, especially as I read the dialogue, but I also wrote the songs, the lyrics to the songs. And one of the very important things to me was to show the poetry of this specific kind of slang. In Morocco, it's not it's never used, almost never used, because it's very vulgar. It's considered very vulgar. It's considered like very offensive language. Especially the word that Raja uses to describe herself, to describe not herself but her occupation, qahwa. It's like everyone in the audience who's Moroccan right now, their ears are burning because I just said that. You know. And there are two things. First one is desensitization. I mean, if you get exposed to it enough, the way these people are, and maybe you get desensitized, you know, and maybe you can listen to what is being said behind the harshness of the words. That's the first thing. And the second one is the just sheer beauty of it all. I mean, it's street poetry. The way people talk, it's amazing. It's amazing because it's something that can only happen in a city that's that young, that harsh, that violent, but also that beautiful. I mean, it can only happen in a city where you have, yeah, sure, it's like it's very poor, but it's also the only place in this very old lady of a country that is Morocco that feels like it's an adolescent. It feels like everything's possible. It feels like you have real, true freedom there. And a lot of the language in the movie comes from that. I mean, yeah, of course it's written in Darija and in Kazawi Darija because it's it couldn't be written. I mean, it's a very I'm very specific about the dialogue in movie. I hate it when we change as so much as a fucking sorry as a comma, you know. I mean, a comma is a pause. It's right. It's all writing. But in writing in Darija, what's great is that those pauses are just as meaningful as the rest of the dialogue. I mean, it's all clashes. Usually, it's what happens. It's very violent and very moving at the same time. People talk with their hearts, you know. It's what makes it so rock and roll too. Casablanca it's essentially rock and roll city because of that. Because you know those bleeding hearts.
Guys, we need to wrap up soon, so this is your last chance to ask any questions if you have any. I cannot not ask you about Khansa, your
sure, man.
who won Best Actress at the Horizonte in the Venice competition at the film premiere. Then, she is a singer, as far as I know. Am I right?
Absolutely, yes. She's
So
a
yeah,
rock star. You know?
so yeah, how did you find her? How was it? Was this her first performance?
Oh, so find her. I wrote the movie for her. Without Hansa, there is no Zanka Contact. I mean, it doesn't exist. The movie is moot without her, because a lot of the character is based on her powerful persona on stage and her very empathetic and honest person, the person that she is. So I stole a lot of things from her. I steal a lot of things from all of them, all my actors. I steal a lot from them, from everyone. But Hansa, essentially, there's that. She gave that heart to the movie, that, like, she's a survivor, man. She's so powerful. And she has that sensitive eye, seeing symptoms in others. She can see, she can feel when someone is, bleeding. She can smell it, and she'll do something. And that's Raja, behind all the armor, and there's a beating heart there, and that's Hansa, and that's Raja. And yeah, so there's that. And then there's another thing that could only be done with Hansa, which is that we made a very musical movie, but it's not musical. It's all live. Every time you see music in a movie, it's performed live. And that was only possible because Hansa, she's always singing live, and it's not Hansa singing, it's Raja. She's interpreting. She's playing that character. And it's amazing because she allowed this character to, and this connection to music in the movie, to be always true to the feelings of the characters. This is the language they speak between them, music. So it was very important, very relevant to the love story. And yeah, it was like she made the movie possible, man.
We have a follow-up question to the Darja question. Do you think Darja deserves to be legitimatized? Do you see it as something literary, despite its surface level vulgarity? You were mentioning its poetic aspect. Is it a problem concerning the entire Arab world, obviously? So you're slightly off topic.
Well, it's not off topic. It's a follow-up question. It's a very good one, because yes, of course, this is like, in a dream world, this is like maybe what we hope that people will keep in mind from the movie, like something that will be the legacy of the movie, that maybe we'll keep in mind that a movie made with this slang and with this vernacular Arabic can make great festivals and have a good career and be considered a work of art. Maybe it's time to stop putting ourselves down and be proud of this language, because it's freaking beautiful. It's rich. It allows a tremendous freedom of expression. It is translatable, because a lot of the political discourse against Derija is that it's not translatable. As much as I know, the movie has been around the world, has been seen in Korea, in wherever, and people have laughed at the same places and cried at the same places. So, to my knowledge, it is translatable. I'm not talking about Derija in general. I'm talking about this specific, could be called vulgar. I'd rather call it street poetry, Derija. Anyway, I do hope that just like we're starting to see with the Amazigh language, there is a true recognition of the Darija language, that it will stop being seen by the powers that be mostly outside of Morocco, I must say, as a sub language, because honestly, the artists and the poets and the musicians and even the writers, some writers are starting. Some did way back when. But if you think Mohammed Shukri is really important. Mohammed Shukri is essentially Darija. So it's naked bread. It's a Darija masterpiece. So you think about Nas El Ghiwan in the 70s, all their songs were written in Darija, and they're masterpieces of Arab poetry. So I hope that we just keep, following this path and stop, putting ourselves down and thinking that we have a sub language when we have just real language.
I have one final question.
Yeah.
Were there any Arabic movies, were there Arab films, were you influenced by? Because I mean, you could definitely like see the like myriad influences, whether it's Tarantino or Lynch, as you mentioned, or many others. But yeah, like I'm just curious. By the way, like my favorite, being a big Western fan, I think for me, like the big showdown at the end was my favorite part of the film. I was completely blown away by.
Cool. Okay.
But yeah, like I just like this is something that I kept like wondering when I was watching the movie. Were there any Arab filmmakers you were influenced by?
Arab films, yes, but more specifically, there's a Moroccan director that was extremely influential for me, and that is it's Fawzi Ben Saidi. Fawzi Ben Saidi, he made A Thousand Months. I'm sorry?
We're still active. We're still making.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just wrapped up shooting on a movie that's a Western in the desert. So I'm extremely eager to see that. But I say was because not that he's not influential now, but as a young student or just a young Moroccan, actually, who was a movie buff, it was the first time seeing A Thousand Months. Was the first time in 2003. I was very young. I was like 20. I watched the Moroccan movie and I didn't think like, yeah, this is good for a Moroccan movie, I was just, okay, this is like straight up in my top 3 of a year where there's Gangs of New York and I mean a big year, an elephant. It's right there. Fawzi has, well, yeah, there's 2 things. The first one is his relationship to genre movies. That was extremely freeing for me because I saw this guy do what I was dreaming to do. Basically, take this freedom and go like so far. If you watch What a Wonderful World, his movie about a contract assassin, I mean, it's crazy. It's a crazy love story, and it's like he makes ballets with cars, and it's like it's a sheer act of mise en scène. It's so powerful, directing wise, and it plays with so many codes of genre movies. There you got film noir in there, you have romantic comedies in there. I mean, it's all mixed, and it's just great. It's just great, and I love Fawzi's movies so much because the other thing that was really important to me when I watched A Thousand Months was that it was the very first time, honestly, that I watched the Moroccan movie and I could hear people talking. I mean, he made the movie with that kind of street poetry that I was talking about, but it was more like it was in the village and the way people talk, village and all that. But it was so specific. And because it was so specific and there was so much love for that specific vernacular Arabic, and it made it universal. And I just thought, okay, that's what I want to do with my neighborhood in Casablanca, yeah, Fawzi was extremely, extremely, extremely influential, and he continues to be. And I think that all of us in like this new generation of Moroccan filmmakers, Sofia Alawi, Yasmin Benkiran, there's a lot of new filmmakers making their first features this year. We were delayed by COVID, but we're coming. And I think we all kind of look, or Miriam Ben Barak, if you think of Sofia, we all think of Fawzi Ben Saidi as he's our daddy, man. He's like, he's our papa. He opened the doors for us. He's kind of this well-meaning figure, you know. And yeah, I think well, that's like the most important. Then there are tons of others. We can get into that if you want, if you have time.
Ismael, thank you so much for this. I mean, it's like somebody. Okay, there's one final question.
Oh yeah.
No final question. Just somebody.
Oh,
else.
okay.
Yeah.
Please, thank you.
Yeah. I could not have hoped for a better opening film for Al-Bustan for 2022 than this, because it's the big charge of energy that
cool.
that I feel this year deserves. Hopefully.
That's great, man. That's great. That's what we wanted the movie to be, like a real boost of life, you know? Yeah,
Yes.
something survived, right?
And yes, so Said, again, lovely seeing you again. Thank you so much again for having for giving us the great opportunity to screen your film. And thanks everybody who showed up. Thanks for your wonderful questions. And we have like a lot of very cool film like coming up this year. So if you like this event, if you like the film, tell everyone you know, bring more people. We have a very eclectic film program for the rest of the year for you guys. Thanks again. And thanks again, Bustan, for
Thank you.
hosting this.
Here, we enjoyed you and enjoyed the conversation. And thank you to the audience for engaging. Look out for an exhibit in our Al-Bustan's Hub on the 24th of February. And as Joseph Fahim had mentioned, a film screening coming up in March, inshallah. Have a lovely evening. Thanks to our guests for tolerating, for participating so late in the night.
No, come on.
It's also after midnight in Paris.
I'm a night owl, man.
You were brilliant in any case. So, thanks very, very much, gents, and
thank you.
Salam.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very, very much, man. Thank you all. Bye.